Hello. Welcome back. Sorry, I just missed the time. I was like, I wrote 14:10, but then in my mind, I was like 14:15. Weird. Okay. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Sorry about the 3 minutes delay there. I hope I still have your attention. So, welcome back to the part 4 of our interview style React and JavaScript. In session 3 or part 3, we were doing the React questions. So we finished up until like 3b2 to understand what's happening. When does React render? When does it not re-render? Uh, how when we have objects, we have to create new references, because if you have stale references, then things do not re-render. We actually saw it practically with examples, with some like uh, console logging around stuff. And yeah, I guess that's majorly what we have been through so far, right? Now the question is, have you already registered? Let me just share the link in the chat again so that you all can register for this final session if you have missed registering, and then we will continue with our world of React and understand a lot of React, right? Okay. Anything that I need to revise? I don't think so. I guess like it must be fresh in our mind with respect to what's happening, what's going on, stuff. Okay, cool. So without any further ado, let's get into it. If you don't have the access to the GitHub repository, here you go. Oh, it increased to 7. Thank you so much, people. I'm glad that you like the effort. Okay, let's get into it. So 3b2, that's where we had entered. Let's go to 3b3. Okay, this is where we are going to start. I have already written the question so that I don't waste too much time on writing the question again. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so what is the question and what do we want to do? So right now, as you can see, that I have this use effect, which like I have 3 use effects in this 3b3. And my question to you all is, when does A, like how many times will A be printed? How many times will B be printed? How many times will C be printed if I click on set user ID to Alice? Okay, forget about the set user ID to Bob. uh, all I want to do is set the user ID to Alice. So I click on this button, set ID Alice. Let's call it my primary button, and I will also have my secondary button. Okay, so I click on this set user ID. It starts with Alice. I click on it again and it sets it to Alice. So how many times will I see this? How many times will I see this? And how many times will I see this? That's my question. Let's try it out. Okay, so 3b2, sorry, 3b2, we need 3b3. Cool. Let's go over, clear, and reload. So A, B, and C Alice is printed on the first render. Okay. So I have one answer which says 1 each. Now I click on set Alice and nothing happens. Okay. It does not do anything. Okay, cool. I uncomment my like the Bob part. Now A, B, C. A is rendered. The first use effect is rendered. Console A, console.log B, and console.log C with Alice on set Alice. I click on set Alice, nothing happens. I click on set Bob. A and C are rendered. Okay. Then I click on set Alice, A and C are rendered. I click on set Bob, A and C are rendered. I click on set Bob again, nothing happens. I click on set Alice, A and C are rendered. So what's happening? And how do these three things, how do these three use effects different? How are these three use effects different? Sorry. Okay. So the first one, okay, and in the second one, if you notice a difference, there is this comma and this array. Okay. This is called a dependency array. Okay. So it means that it depends on something. In the first case, we have no dependency array, which means that every time there is a re-render, that use effect will run. Rendered. Okay. So every time there is a re-render, that particular use effect is going to run. Okay. So that is why A gets printed every time. So I can basically say like A is printed every render. And this is something that you never want. Like ideally, you will never want this to happen. Okay. You don't want any use effect which kind of runs on every render. You always want use effects which either run once on the mount or when the dependency changes. So that is the second one. So in the second one, you have an empty array. An empty array here means that it will run once on mount only. When I say mount, it means that when React renders for the very first time, all the use effects are going to be run. Okay, all the use effects are going to be run. So in that case, the B, uh, like this console.log B, is going to be printed only once on the first render or the first mount. Okay, after this, it's never going to be printed. As you can see, between when I switch between these, only A and C get printed every time, never B after that point. And then we have the C use effect. Now this one has a dependency on the word user ID, or on the state, not the word, on the state user ID. So what that means is that every time user ID changes, this use effect is going to run. So when I keep on switching between like Bob and Alice, C gets printed. Okay. Every time I switch between them, C gets printed. So the first time on the initial load, everything renders, all the use effects run on the first load. So that's how we end up with like user ID set to Alice on the first one. Then I set it to Bob. There's a re-render. A changes because A is going to run on every re-render, and C is going to run whenever the user ID changes. Since it changed to Bob, so here we go. I change it to Alice, and this is what happens. Change to Bob again, and yeah, okay. So C uh, is basically like every time user ID changes. Okay, that's when C is going to run. Any questions about this particular use effect? And if I now, like, did you notice that there was this rendered that happened once? Because React is like, okay, I need to just render to compare that nothing has changed. Yep, nothing has changed. I don't need to update the DOM. And then the subsequent renders do not happen. Okay. But after this, there we go. But if you have the same one, nothing changes. Cool. Okay. Any questions about this? And any questions about when does use effect re-render? What is dependency array? Okay, what does that actually mean? So if you don't have a dependency array, every time React decides to re-render or render, you can say, this use effect is going to run. if you have an empty array, it only runs on mount. So if you have anything that needs to happen like one time, or there's a one time setup needed, that's when you would kind of create a use effect with an empty dependency array. And uh, this third type of dependency arrays, or this third type of use effect with a dependency array which kind of tracks a variable, this is like whenever you want to synchronize something. Okay. uh, or maybe kind of like you want to update your screen based on some value that keeps updating or will update whenever certain actions happen. So for all of those, you need to kind of track that variable, and uh, what else to say, and pass it to as a dependency array to the use effect. And then based on it, use effect will decide, oh, something has changed, let me kind of re-render. And you can read more about it in the synchronizing with effects. Okay, so here's a quick link of the documentation that you need to kind of understand what is use effect, like if you want to kind of learn from that document or from the documentation, which I think is a very good source of everything about React. Oh, there's a message. Sorry, new to JS. Okay. So my suggestion would be, like, if you're very new to JS, then none of these streams would be a good starting point. Sorry about that. Let me go on screen. Yep. So if you're new to JS, none of these streams are going to be very good starting point because it is aimed at someone who knows JavaScript and React. But I have had previous streams which are like very basic JavaScript, and a few things that I tell people to kind of reference to learn JavaScript is javascript.info. Okay, that would be my suggestion. What is JavaScript? And uh, if you are mm, mm, if you don't know about this particular website, roadmap.sh, I guess this is the perfect time to know about it. Uh, so here you go. So again, my go-to website. I have no affiliation with any one of these websites or anything, but this is what I have used in the past. So I would suggest you all to kind of, give it a try. Let me know how it goes. So you can kind of go through, like, let's say, skill-based roadmap and learn about, okay, what is JavaScript, and this has links to like free resources. I am not going to say anything about the premium resources, to each their own. I normally go for just free resources. They are good enough for everything. So history of JavaScript, JavaScript versions, uh, how to run JavaScript, I guess everything about JavaScript, then all about variables. You can see some free resources. So click on each of them, see the courses, some links that it has. Week map. We did not cover week map, but there are two articles linked of week map and week set. Typecasting. What is it? What is it? What does it mean? We did a lot of work on comparison. So remember, double equals, triple equals, object dot is, all those things that we talked about. Okay, so yeah, these would be my two go-to websites if you want to kind of learn about JavaScript from scratch. Uh, and it also has links to other things. And then you can go to React if you want to do front-end development with React. Learn about React. Okay, so what we just did was use effect, the official use effect hook guide, and use effect by example. So another really nice website. Okay, and of course, you can always go to the YouTube channel of Major League Hacking. And here you can find like the previous sessions that have been done. uh, I guess a good starting point. So if I just search for React, intro to React, getting started with React, there we go. And even JavaScript. intro. Oh, this is me. And there are some really awesome streams by other people. I guess another good starting point. And also you'll find the recording of these past 4 sessions. So this is part 2, part 1, part 2. We did part 3 like right here, and this is part 4 currently live. Okay. Cool. I guess that should hopefully answer all the questions. And now let's go back. So now you understand, when does use effect run, what happens when it re-renders, what is re-render. Let's move on to the next question. Okay. So in the next question, 3b4, what's going to happen in this case? So it's again a use effect question. Okay. Let me go here, comment this out, and 3b4. Why did I comment this out? We did not comment it out for others. Okay. 3b4. There's this very simple uh, use effect. And now my question is, what's going to happen when we run this? When I when I run this. Oof. Let's try it out. And this is what's happening. I have gone into an infinite loop. Okay. And this doesn't stop. And very soon it's going to kill my PC. So I'm going to just comment out this use effect and hope for the best. Ah, done. Okay. So what's happening, and why do we end up in such situations? And you will end up in such situations every now and then. So what's happening here is, we on mount use effect runs, and inside use effect we have given a dependency array saying that there is this count variable. Whenever the count variable changes, okay, no, note the wording here. Whenever the count variable changes, I want to run this effect. Okay. So in dependency array, what it means is, count variable changes, run the effect. Now at this point, this will trigger a re-render. So this will update the count, which means count variable changes, which means again it goes inside this use effect, it updates the count, which means count variable changes, runs it again, and this is what we end up with. Okay. This is what we end up with. Do you think, now my question is, if I make this a previous, like, use a callback, do you think that's going to help me fix it? Question to you all. Will that help me fix the issue? Okay. The answer is, okay, no, and probably the answer actually is no. Okay. Why? Let's reload and see. We are still having the same problem. Like, regardless of the callback or anything that we're doing, we are still saying that, okay, update the count variable, and every time count changes, run this effect again. Every time count changes, run this effect again. So like, regardless of what we are doing, like, even if this is the correct way to set the previous value so that you don't end up in like stale values or anything, this effect is still running and running and running. If I remove this count, now do you think will it fix it? Hmm. Seems to me that it does. But now what's happening is that only on the first run, when the mount happens, In that case, we are updating the value to 1. But after this use effect is never going to run, right? So since this use effect is never going to run, it is kind of fixed. Not fixed, but more like we don't end up in infinite loop. Okay. So reload, +1, +1, +1. Okay. So we are not into any infinite loops now, thankfully. As soon as I add this, infinite loop. Okay. So just a quick example, a visual example of what could happen and what goes wrong when you depend on something which in turn kind of triggers another like run, which triggers dependency change, which triggers another run, which triggers dependency change, and that's how you end up with infinite loop. Okay. Regardless of like this version or like count +1 version, okay, both of them are equally dangerous. If I don't update this, I have killed my session, like I've killed my screen. So if I don't update it inside it, then it's fine. Okay. If I don't update the set count, then it's fine, like 100%. Which version is this using? Okay, cool. So in the newer version of React, actually, you will see a message uh, that you're trying to do a set inside a use effect, which will trigger a re-render. So don't do that. Okay. I think it's one of the error messages that you will get. Either the linter throws it or React throws it. But yes, you will see such messages. So React now gives you a proper clear warning that whatever you're trying to do a set state inside effect that will kind of cause a re-render. So don't do that, please, because you will end up with infinite loops. Okay, maximum call stack depth increased. I'm just going to quickly comment this one out. Otherwise, I'm going to break my project. Okay, so that was 3B4. Hopefully, you understood when does infinite loop happen. So now in the interview, if you're given such a scenario, when you're given such a question, what you need to find is inside the use effect, what's the dependency array? In that dependency array, will that trigger a new, if like, will that trigger a set update, which will trigger another like dependency, like which will trigger use effect to run again? That is what you need to kind of find. And if you can find that, so in this case you will be like, okay, I have a count variable and set count variable. That count variable is in the dependency array. If the user does anything, or even on the first mount, if this changes, then set count will run. If set count runs, in that case it will update the count variable to be some new value. If that new value happens, then this use effect will run again, and now you know, yes, definitely this will keep on triggering a re-render and this will go into infinite loop. Okay, so yeah, that was about when, if given such a question in interview, how you will need to kind of trace through it. Cool. Okay, next up is 3B5. The question here is going to be, what is a cleanup function and why do we need it? Okay, so you might have heard about cleanup functions. The question is like, what is cleanup function and why do we need it? Okay. So I have this create connection function, which returns, you can say like two methods. Like there's a connect and there's a disconnect. Okay. And just print some random string. So there's nothing like fancy going on, just a function, normal function. Now in 3b5, I have a room ID, set room ID. It starts with use state set to general. Then there's a use effect. Inside the use effect, we call connection, like create connection with the room ID, connection.connect. Then we have a return. Inside that return, we have connection.disconnect. And then some stuff. Yeah. Do I have another? So I have button primary, secondary, or danger. Okay, cool. So let's try this out and see what happens. Okay, cool. So connecting to room general. So because on the first render, we know that this use effect is going to run, and it creates a connection with the room ID set to general. So it goes here and it prints like connecting to room, and it prints the general. Okay. I'm going to have rendered here. Perfect. Okay, rendered, and here we go. Now I click on general again, nothing happens. I click on random. So when I click on random, there's a rendered. Then we have this disconnecting from room general, and then we have connecting to room random. Now I click on MLH, rendered, disconnecting from room random, and connecting to room MLH. So this is called a cleanup function. And the idea of a cleanup function is that cleanup runs before the next effect and on unmount. Okay. So before the next effect happens, now this effect is going to run because we have a dependency on the room ID. Okay. So we are saying that, so like, or not we are saying, but more like what this cleanup function does is that it says that the previous effect that had run, undo that change. Okay. And before you run the new one. So one of the real use case that you see, like not in terms of like strings, but if this connection was to actually connect to a server, if this connection was to, I don't know, do something, some API call, if you have event listeners, in that case, you should always have cleanup functions. Okay. So that when some variable changes, in this case, room ID changes, which will trigger a re-render, you want to ensure that the previous thing has been cleared before the new thing happens. If you don't do these cleanups, then you will cause memory leaks. You will have stale listeners. You will have a lot of race conditions. Okay. Like in real projects, you will end up with a lot of race conditions around things. Like what if there is a race between setting the room ID and then disconnecting from the previous one? Like a lot of headaches, I would say. So if I remove that, I like okay. So I guess in this one it doesn't really make a make much of a difference, or it's not like, okay, it won't be like very easily understandable in this term, I would say, in this example. But the idea of cleanup function is that you have to first clean up, like you will say like I'm disconnecting from the previous version, and then you have a new effect that runs whenever there is an unmount of a component, which means like the component is deleted. In that case, it will kind of also run the cleanup. Okay. So if I do all of this, I go to random, I go to MLH, and then I go here and remove this. Okay. You can see that it actually printed disconnecting from room MLH. Okay. I had connecting to room MLH, or connect. should I make it connected? Connecting to room this, and then connected to room let me make it a different color. Okay, 3b5. Okay, connecting to room general, connected to room general, disconnecting from room general, connecting to room random, connected to room random, and now uh, let's do MLH as well. Disconnecting from room random, connecting to room MLH, connected to room MLH. Now, if there is an unmount, okay, unmount is basically, let's say this component disappears from the DOM. In that case, you will see that it is disconnecting from room MLH. Okay, so effect also runs whenever there is an unmount. It's like a final set of cleanup that needs to happen. So why would a component disappear from screen? Suppose you're switching tabs. Okay, so on tab 1 you have this whole connection, and then on tab 2 you have something else. So when you switch from tab 1 to tab 2, you want to like kind of remove this element that was rendered in the DOM. Then you will run this effect to kind of clean up anything that was happening on this tab 1. Okay, so tab 1 or page 1, whatever you call it. Any questions on the cleanup? When it runs, how it runs, what happens? I'm liking the color of console. Yep, disconnecting. Yep, disconnecting. And there we go. Disconnecting. Okay, I don't see anything in chat, which I would presume that, yep, everyone's happy and they're understanding, no questions from anyone, which is good for me. Uh, and that's the end of everything that I wanted to cover in session 3. Okay, there is one question. Examples of where to use cleanup function in production build. I mean, I did answer in terms of like, let's say you want to clear timers. Okay, suppose you have two timers. You have a timer which kind of sets timer to count something, and then you have another timer which you start like after 5 minutes. Like manually click on a button to start the timer. Now you don't want them to clash, or you only want one timer to run at a time. So whenever you start a new timer, you want to clear the previous timer. Okay? So that's where you will use the use effect cleanup function. We will do a return. Okay, a return, which like the syntax is always going to be something like this. Not something. This will always be the syntax of having this return of a function, and inside that function you can do whatever you want. So yes, clearing timers. So every time you click on start timer again, you will clear the previous timer and then start the new one. Then uh, I'd say closing API, or canceling API calls. So suppose on click, actually I've given away my next question that I was going to ask or show you all. Next interview question, but okay, that's fine. So suppose I have one API connection, and then I like the user tries to do something else, okay, which calls the same API again. So you don't want to end up with the previous result on the screen. You want to cancel the previous call and start a new call. So if you want to cancel API calls, that's again when you will use a cleanup function to cancel anything that happened before. uh, Event listeners, if you have an event listener which listens to some sort of mouse movement or something, that's when you will, that's mostly when you will actually do cleanup as well. So I guess something like this. Uh, Mouse move. And now I go back and do this. Mm, I'm trying to remember the syntax of an event listener. I think it should be something very similar to this. Mm, okay. I'm making this mistake. Hmm. Okay, anyways, but something along these lines of if you add an event listener as a use effect, you will also want to have a cleanup function that runs to remove the event listener whenever some other thing changes. You can try it out later. So this was correct, but I need to kind of hold a reference for another function and then call the cleanup. Anyways, yes, that should be it in terms of what's happening and what happens in when you like when should you call the cleanup, how should it work, and so on and so forth. I'm trying to think if I have to do. Okay, I guess this should be fine. Okay, cool. I will leave it at this. I don't want to add or complicate it by adding, yeah, timers. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one. Session 3 is technically now done. So I'm going to do git add all, git commit dash m session 3. We did use effect, like that was majorly use effect questions. That was majorly our focus. Oops, I did a git add all. That's a problem. Git reset previous one, previous commit. I want to remove this, this, and this. Okay. So the only things that I want to push as part of like session 3 changes would be 3b3, 3b4, 3b5. Session 3b3 is fine. Session 3b4 is okay. Session 3b5 is also okay. And now let's push this. Sorry, commit. Okay, I think this should be good. So now we should have another the commit number 7, which should have all the use effect questions that we did. Okay, and here you go. Mm, Cool. Okay, so with the end of like session 3, let's go to session 4. Okay, I'm going to stop my previous Wheat project that was running, clear it, ensure that I'm using version 2020, like not 2022, 22.20.0, cd into session dash 4. Apparently, I'm in the wrong folder, so cd dot slash cd into session 4, and now just start npm run dev, which will start 5173, which should lead us to the session 3. Not session 3, sorry, session 4. Okay, there's a session 4. Okay, so before we go ahead with session 4 questions, any questions, anyone? Okay, going to take the silence as golden, and also let me rearrange my desktop. Go, let's go. So session 4, let's start. So similar looking, exactly same looking, I would say. I have session 4A1, which is in the session 4A folder, and I have this component. Okay, someone gives you this component as part of your uh, interview question. So in the component, we have a fake search. It returns a new promise. There's a set timeout, so it will return the results after like 300 milliseconds. And it tries to resolve this promise by setting this, like returning this array of ID and title. Okay. User has a search results component. So in this search result component, I have like use state, which has results and set results. Okay. Whenever user types in the input, it tries to call this set query. Initially, it starts with React, and then the user will maybe manipulate it. So search results gets query as one of the inputs whenever user tries to type something else. Search results get it. Search result in turn calls this use effect with the fake search, and whenever query changes, and then it returns something else. And this is my fake search. Okay. So hopefully the question is clear. Like we have session 4A1, where there is an input box. Inside the input box, user can type something, and after typing, they get a result back, which shows a list on the screen. So I reload, I get result React result 1, React result 2. I type view, and then I type, let's say, view 1, view. Okay. So now the problem is, or the problem that will happen in this case, uh, eventually, is that sometimes you will see wrong results. Okay. Sometimes you will see wrong results, and the question is, how will you fix it? So the wrong results will be like, if I try to type in, like, let's say React, or let's change this timer to like 900. Okay. So I tried to type in 1 1, and then I removed the last 1 1. And even though I have removed it very quickly, I see that it actually got me a result which was like an old or stale result. So if I change this to 1 second, 1121, and I remove that, but I see the stale result. Okay. So I've not typed that, but I still see stale result. So the question is that what's going on and how do we fix it? Does the question make sense in terms of what's happening? Like, I'm trying to uh, change this value from React to, let's say, Vue or Wire, React, React 1 2, 1 3, and then remove the 3. So I've quickly changed my input, but I still see stale result. And this will happen like in a real world scenario where I have a promise which is going to resolve, or I have requested data from an API, and that API is slow in returning the data. So users will see the data that they like kind of like they mistyped. So the question is, how are you going to fix it? Okay, so this ties back to the previous one that we saw, which was like cleanup. Okay, so now we want to add a variable which we will clean up, which will like, or will in the use effect, we'll have a cleanup function. Uh, and this bug is going to be very subtle. Okay, it will only show up if the user is very fast in typing, or the network that they are on is very slow. So in that case, it's going to be very hard to reproduce this issue, and it is very easy to miss. Like this type of problem is like really, really, really easy to miss, because very simply, if you're like developing it locally, you will be like, okay, I type this, I get the response back. I type this value, I get the response back, and everything is fine. Uh, but in a real world scenario, it's quite possible that the user has slower network, or a user is a fast typer. They try to kind of search for the wrong results, and uh, or the result of something, then they realized, oh no, sorry, there's a spelling mistake, I changed it, but I still get a response back of a wrong result. Okay, so in this case, to fix it, what you can do is add a flag. Okay, so you can have a flag called as let's tail equals to false, right? So now fake search query, then data, and now I can say that set the result. So if not stale, in that case, set the results data to this. Okay. And finally, as part of my cleanup, I can say that stale is actually true. And then we have query, and we have everything else as is. So now I have React. I do React 1, and then I remove it. As you can see, it doesn't become 1 2 2, and then I remove all of that. It doesn't become 1 2 2 and then come back, because it's like, okay, the user has changed it, so I need to cancel the previous two queries. Okay, so it's very similar to our, like, not very similar, it is about the cleanup effect. The example might seem a bit fakey because, well, of course, the fake search. Uh, but the actual real world impact is like true, like it will happen. Okay. So in terms of API searches or something, you can like have these cleanup functions where you can say, okay, let me see if the user has typed something over, if they have changed their input, and if they have changed the input, let me clear the previous one as part of my cleanup. So when use effect runs, it will be like, oh, the value has changed, let me clear the previous one and start with the new search. In terms of APIs, you have something called as a abort controller. Okay. So if you are like actually calling an API and you want to change whatever has happened, like if the input changes, you want to cancel the previous request, then you can use something like a abort controller. Okay. Wrong this, but here's another documentation link to it. So in API requests, as I said, like you can use a bot controller to cancel the network request, like completely cancel the network request. Okay, any questions, anyone? Okay, nothing in the chat, so I presume everything is fine. Okay, I'm trying to see if I have a fake fetch API that I can kind of try out very quickly, if that makes sense. Okay, I can do something. Let me create a session 4A 1B.tsx. We can do RFCE and I can have like const. So I found that I can use this to do's API. Okay, it returns to do's of one, then I have two, then I have three. So what if in the search result I actually type 1, 2, 3, and I want to abort the previous response? Mm, const to do, comma, set to do id, to do id, set to do id equals use state of, let's say, one, can be a string, it's fine. And what can I do? Return a div, and inside this div I'm going to have an input of type text, and the value will be set to the to do id, so it is set to 1. And whenever the user changes something, so on change, what I want to do is take the event and set the to do id to the new input that the user is typing. Okay, perfect. Session for A1B. Now I need to have another component. So I will show to do result right here. Now let's create this to do result component. So const to do result equals a quick function right here. And this one, what can I do? Okay, const to do result, comma, set to do result equals, initially let's set it to null. Okay, so there is no result. And next up I want a use effect, of course, because that's what I want to show, the abort controller. Use effect. Now inside this use effect I'm going to, step one, always, like, my go-to thing is that always try and see what is going to be, ouch, uh, what does this depend on. So it needs to depend on to do id, so I need to get a prop here of to do id, because whenever id changes we need to kind of run this function. So I'm going to pass to do id to this. Perfect. Yeah, that's fine. I don't care about the types right now. Okay, so now to use a controller, we'll see const controller equals to new abort controller. Okay, so we create a new abort controller. Let's create a const fetch to do, to do, to do. Okay, it's asynchronous, and asynchronous because, well, there can be time. And now I'm going to add a await, but to show that things can take up time, I'm going to create a quick delay function which takes, how many milliseconds you want to delay something. And I'm going to return a new promise, okay, which will say resolve, okay, resolve and set timeout, resolve and milliseconds. I guess this should do the trick. Okay, so what I'm doing here is that I am going to add some fake delay. Okay, delay by, let's say, 2000, so 2 seconds delay, so that when I type in the input box, then I have enough time to kind of uh, clear that input, type a new uh, id there, and you can see the abort controller working. Const response, it is going to be await the fetch call, and we are going to fetch the url. But the only difference here is that this value will depend on the to do id, so base url slash the id. Okay, and inside this we can pass a signal, and we will say this is equal to controller dot signal. Okay, so this signal will give it a signal to kind of cancel the request when things don't go the way we want. Or example, user changes the input and then we want to cancel the request. Const data equals await response dot json, so we get a json response back, and we can call the set to do result with, and set the data there. Question to you all: is this a good way, or should I do like dot 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 uh, to do result and then do the data. Should I do this, or should I just do set it to data? Think of it while I just finish up this. So now fetch to do, I can say dot catch any uh, error, and then console.log error. And finally, not finally, but in terms of a cleanup function, because of which we did all of this, I'm going to do controller dot abort. Now my use effect is done, and now I just need a return where I return my JSX. So inside this div tag, all I care about is technically the to do result dot id and title. And this could be null, so I'm going to just do a question mark. I guess this should be fine. 4A1B. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, so clear all, reload. There's nothing. I changed it to 2, and there is something. Now I change it to 3, and then I change it to 1. I should get the response back of 1, not of 3. Okay. Signal is aborted. And now if I go over to my network tab, let me clear everything, reload, close this, and let's only see the fetch request. So I have 1. I clear this to 2, and then I clear this to 3. Okay. So in that case, only the request 3 has gone, and 1 after 1 we have 3. We have no 2. If I change this to 23 and then I change it to 21, okay. So after 2 seconds, okay, here we go. User ID 2, ID 21, title and completed. Okay, there's something there. But yeah, ID 21, that is what I need to focus on. And we can actually see this in JSON placeholder. If I change this to like 21, okay, does this data match with the data that I have? What is this? Oh, I don't want to separate the views, please. User ID 2, ID 21, and title is this, whatever. Okay. Change it to 2, then I change it to 1. So it should match with what I have for 1, ID 1, and there we go. Perfect. So this is how you can use abort controller to kind of abort any uh, network requests that you don't want to happen. And you will see some like console errors or like an error that is printed. So if I basically go back here and say console.error 11, 12. Okay. Error occurred and blah, blah, blah. Line number 28. Line number 28. So this is basically getting run. We can give it a reason. The reason can be like user changed input. Okay. So we can give it such a reason. So 11 and 12. So use error occurred, user changed the input, and that's where we end up. Cool. Hopefully it made sense with respect to like everything that we have done. How you can use a bot controller to ensure that there are no API requests. There are no useless API requests that go in. You wait for the user to finish chain like typing kind of, and then you go, why is this a problem? Okay, that's fine. You can also add a quick if no to do result, just return. Okay. So then we won't have to do like this question mark. Yeah. No to do result, then return. But then we get the to do result, make it two, then make it three, then make it four. Then we have the user changing the input multiple times, and but we end up with the last one, which is four. Okay. So after one, we have four, which went in with that delay. Perfect. I am so glad. Uh, Thank you so much. And okay, so that's about abort controller. Some live coding based on the abort controller documentation. These things are unhappy because they're like, you set it to null, but then what's the type and stuff. I will say that the type is any because I am lazy to write the type right now. MS is number, so this is fine. And why is this unhappy? To do ID, it is also of type any. Okay, no type errors. Okay, zero type errors because well, I have technically written JavaScript in TypeScript code. Okay, uh, yes, true. That is true. We learn every day. I learn every time I have sessions, even though I've prepared for it. Then someone asks me a question. I try to do live coding, and I realize, this doesn't work. And I have to kind of Google search about controller, and then I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do. Perfect. Okay. Anyways, moving on to the next one, 4A2. Uh, ah, what was the question here? Uh, 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 okay, so the question in this case is that uh, if I type something, what's going to happen? So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to do session 4A2. Let's see, render. So I have a function add to top, which should add it to the top. Whenever I click on this add to top, it should add something to the top. Perfect. I click on, let me also give it a class name of primary. Okay. I reload, learn React, build app, deploy. I click on add to top. Deploy is added after this. Okay. Why? Okay. Why is it getting added after? If my function says it is add to top, what's going on here? Hmm? Okay. The other thing is, if I change this to this is MLH and I click on add to top, okay, it stays on top. Okay. And there's deploy added. This is GHW, add to top. It stays there. Deploy is added after. What's going on with this? Okay. So the problem here is index. Okay. Index and what's going on? What are we doing? And like how can we fix this? So on and so forth. Like a lot of questions in this point at this point about this. Okay. So, whenever I type something in the first input and I click on add to top, what happens to my type text? It stays here, right? It stays on this particular place. And secondly, as soon as I like type something, I click on add to top, a new element is added at the bottom rather than going on the top, and my input remains on the top. But that's not what I want. In my add to top function, I say that there's this new task that needs to be added up on top, and then I have all the remaining things, okay, all the remaining to dos that I have created. So a new task needs to be added on top. That doesn't happen, and that is a problem. So this is me typing. I click on add to top, and something weird goes on. Okay. So uh, the reason is that we are using index as a key. Okay. So whenever we use index, this index parameter is goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So whenever we click on the add to top button, this index, it goes like, okay, the old item, it remains at a 0th position. The new item, after clicking on add to top, after typing, it that becomes at the 0th position. React sees that, oh, the key is still 0. So I'm going to kind of use the same DOM node, and that is why nothing changes. So to fix it, to see a difference, I can do to do dot id as the key. So this will ensure that a new task gets added on top, because now there is a stable id. Okay. So the idea is that if you use, let's say, index, or the difference, not idea, the difference is that when you use index as a key, okay, you use index as a key. Let me clear all of this, reload. I go to elements, and let's check it out in action. I have ul. Okay. And I change this learn react to mlh. Okay. I click on add to top. In this case, index of mlh becomes 0. Okay. So react thinks that, oh, this has not changed, nothing has changed. Let me leave whatever the user has added at the 0th position, and I don't need to shift things around. Okay, that is why in React, you need to ensure that you use stable keys that will change between, like, whenever things change. Okay, whenever things change, you need to ensure that there are keys which are kind of unique. So now if I type mlh and click on add to top, it goes like, oh, the key has changed, the id has changed. What is the id in our case? Id is nothing but date dot now in whenever we do add to top, and previously it was 123. These are keys which will tell you react that, okay, the order has changed. Whenever order has changed, react will render everything that has changed. Okay. So when to use index as a key versus when to use unique keys. So when you want to ensure that the list is never going to be reordered and items don't have any local state, nothing is going to change, in that case you use index as a key. But whenever you have something dynamic that will change or that should change, in that case, you should always use your own unique keys. Okay. Now I'll also give you one more error. So if I have all these three IDs set to 1 and I reload, you will see that here's an error that comes in. It says that it encountered two children with the same key 1. So keys should be unique so that components maintain their identity across updates. What updates are we talking about here? We're talking about the renders and the re-renders. Okay. So whenever we have a re-render, React needs to know in the tree, in the object comparison, it needs to know which things need to be updated. If you say that uh, I have two different components with the same unique ID, React will be confused with respect to which one needs update, and it tries to update everything, or it may try to avoid updating everything. Both of the scenarios could happen. Okay, so as you can see, non-unique keys may cause children to be duplicated and or omitted. Okay, so either whatever you are trying to render will be deleted, or it will be duplicated. It will not rend like during render it will not update the correct item. Between render it may delete something because it goes like, I'm not sure which key to kind of focus on. It's like in objects when we have the same key and we assign different values to the same key. Okay, anything could happen technically. uh, so yes, always have unique keys so that when you want to reorder certain things, or when you want to tell React what to change at what position, uh, if something has changed in some position and you want to do a reorder, in that case you ensure that some unique key is passed. Excuse me, sorry about that. Okay, so hopefully it makes sense with respect to what is index and what is a unique key and why we should use unique keys, because if we don't, then we have a problem. Hmm, yeah, ignore. I'm not going to fix the component, it's boring. Okay. Next question that we have that we need to kind of understand when we understand about React. Uh, let's go into this one and let's do session 4A3. Close. Okay. Okay. I'm going to type hello. And I have typed hello, but it says it's searching for hell. Okay. A bit depressing. I typed MLH. It's searching for ML. Where is the H gone? So now let's go to the component. And here's the whole code. Uh, any ideas, anyone? Anyone wants to take a quick guess of what's happening here? So basically, what we are seeing is that the results is like one stop behind. Okay, so searching for, so the results, it basically says searching for, and then this query, and that query is currently input is MLH, but it says searching for ML. Okay, so now the question or the problem here is that why, and how can we fix it? Okay, why is my result one step behind of what I have typed? So if I type MLH GHW, I will end up with MLHGH. So always one character behind. What's going on? uh, I'll leave it on this for 1 second and then we will kind of understand what's going on. Okay, just waiting for any answers in the chat, or anyone, from anyone, not for anyone, from anyone. Okay, no answers. Let's understand. So uh, the problem is that set query is not going to update the query variable immediately. Okay. So what's basically happening is that I type one character. I type one character. In that case, set query is going to update the query in the next render, whenever the next render happens. Okay. So in this case, this query variable or whatever we are printing in the results. So query is our input. No, not that one. So results. Okay. So in this case, the results, it is referencing the query, which was from the previous render when it got the data, when it had received, like when this function had actually received some value. Okay. So when I type L, in that case, it goes and fetches the query. It gets the query from the previous render, from the previous update. And that is why we are always one step, one character behind, because it's not getting an update of the new one, it's getting an update from the old snapshot. Okay. And this can lead to like so many bugs. You'll always be like, what is going on? Why am I not getting the newer result? And like causes like so many issues. Okay. There are multiple ways to fix this. In terms of like what's happening, like not what's happening, how can we ensure that we always have the latest result? Multiple ways. Let's start with the easier way. The easier way is to have a new variable, const new query equals to e dot target dot value. Okay. Now I call the set query with the new query variable that we have just created. And in the set results, we use the new query variable. So now what we have done is that we have a new, like a separate variable, not a state variable. So if it's not a state variable, React will not do batching of updates. React will not go like, okay, I'll batch it in the next re-render or something. It will be like, okay, I got a variable. I'm going to basically uh, run it, and set query will get this new variable as well. My set results is relying on this particular variable and not a batched value. Okay, not the one that React decides to re-render when it decides to. So kind of like this is one of the solutions that you can have. A second solution, excuse me, a second solution could be, uh, instead of deriving the value, what if you just set it? I mean, that's also an option. So you don't need another state variable to kind of capture these. You can just have const results equals searching for this particular query. Okay. And technically, you can also get rid of this handle change function. You can say, okay, I have this, and I just do a set query, and I do say e dot target dot value, and I can basically get rid of all of this. So now my whole code kind of reduces to one state variable which has query and set query. Whenever query is updated, whenever user types something, in that case I will have like this on change will trigger, which will set query to whatever the user is typing, and my results is basically deriving the value. It's not like there's no second use state needed to track something. So now if I do uh, m l h works. Okay. So multiple ways to fix it. uh, what we need to understand or learn from it. So whenever, if you are asked a question in the format that we had it before, which was this format. And the question is that I'm trying to type, or maybe the question could be, what is the error in this code? The answer is that state is always a snapshot. Set query will schedule a re-render, and it won't change it on at the point where you want it to change. Okay, it will schedule a re-render, and when that re-render happens, then the query will be updated for set results, and that's when this gets updated. Okay, so that's what you need to remember. State is a snapshot of, like, at some point it's taken a snapshot. It's like taking a photo. Okay, and that photo is updated whenever there is a re-render. So if I do a console.log re rendered, and then I have like some exclamation marks here, some exclamation marks here, and I go here, reload, I type M. Okay, rendered L, there is one render, but that render has not updated my set results. Okay, okay, rendered, updated outside, I type M. Okay, updated set query, updated set results, but my result variable has not changed. Okay, so if I also kind of console log the results here, and I console log the query here, M. Okay, query is still the old value. Set query has updated, but it has not set it for the next render. Now, if I change it to L, in that case, set query has updated, but it's holding the snapshot of the previous value. Okay, so searching for has the query of whatever, like, the previous value is. Results, what's the problem with results? Is it not a string? It is a string, right? Query ML, searching for also has the wrong results. Okay, so this is how you end up with a lot of confusion around what is the value of results, what's the value of this and that. Okay, I've typed out like so much. This is like one step behind to even my results bit. Weird, very, very, very weird. So, talking points for an interview would be, from your perspective, if someone asks you this question, state is a snapshot. Set query will schedule, like, it schedules a re-render, but that doesn't change the query variable right away. Uh, and if you want to fix it, multiple ways to do it. Number one, if one value can be computed directly from another, example, we did the whole uh, const results equals to directly, like, rendering without having a state variable, then don't store it and just derive it. And derived state will ensure that there are fewer bugs, there are fewer re-renders, and there's always less code. Okay, so if you can derive something, prefer deriving it rather than having a new state variable to store it. Okay, and there is the documentation of when should you, like, choose state variables, what should you do, how can you, like, ensure that you don't end up with multiple states, use states. So I guess this is one of the really good part of documentation to read. Example, should you do this, or should you do this? Either of these approaches work fine, but if they are two variables that change together, it should be a good idea to unify them into single state variables. Okay, avoid redundant state. That is also something that we just discussed. Okay, redundant state is when you have to do something like this. If you can derive it, please derive it. Okay, avoid duplication. Avoid deeply nested state. Like, this is hilariously wrong. Okay, don't do that. Okay, so that's about it. I had a solution for it. Now I don't know how many undos would I have to do. So let me try and figure it out. So I need to remove this. I need to remove this. I need to just have const results equals to searching for this query. So we can just derive the result rather than waiting for it. Okay. This is the minimal number of change I'm going to do for this. Okay. Any questions, anyone, with regards to everything that we have done so far? Okay, cool. No questions. So I am going to go for the next one. Oof. Now we are talking about timers, and this is when things get a bit messy. Okay. Uh, you're like, okay, what's going to happen? How is this going to work? Timers are always confusing. So let's quickly add something. Count, and I guess based on the time, this would be our last question. Use state of 0. So count and set count, use state of 0. I will have a use effect, and inside this use effect, I'm going to say that this runs once, and I'm going to have const id equals to set interval. A callback function, I'm going to say console.log tick count is whatever the count, and I'm going to set count to count plus 1. Okay, and since this is an interval, I'm going to say that this needs to happen every second. And because we learned about cleanup, so I'm going to say that here's a cleanup function which should clear the interval for that particular id. Okay, and inside this div tag, let me have a p tag, which all it does, it prints the count. Let's go over here, let's comment this out, and I will have session 4a4. Okay, now my question to you all is that, will this counter go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or not? Oh, after we have done this uh, question, I will share something. Okay, so the answer is not. It will not go. Okay, let's check it out. Is it because we only have, like, we only run this once? Is that why? Or something else? Let's see. I reload, counter goes from 0 to 1, and then it is stuck at 1 on the update, even though this keeps updating in my console, and it's stuck on 0. And the reason is, uh, this is what we did in session 2, closure. Okay, stale closure. So the screen is stuck at 1. Console, in on every second, as you can see, every second it is printing like count is 0. And this is because the use effect is going to run once because of the empty dependency array. It's only going to run once on mount. Then the callback, okay, this callback, this set interval callback, it closes over the closure part, if you remember, closes over it when the count with count 0. So now at every tick, okay, it goes 0 plus 1, 1. Every tick 0 plus 1, 1. And we can see that like count is always 0. So set count is always 1. How can we fix it? We have done this again so many times. What if I take the previous value and do a previous plus 1? Do you think this should fix it? Let's try it out. So 0, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So this is slightly fixed or nearly fixed. We still have one problem. Okay. Which is count is still 0 somehow. If I print it like right after this, okay, then we have the correct value because set updates and then we have some changes, but only during a re-render this actually updates. If I do some changes around, if I move them around, there's a re-render because as you can see there's a this hot update, and after that whatever is the latest capture value of count, that is what is getting printed, even though on screen I can see things are updating fine. Okay, what if I move this out of my use effect? Do you think then I'll have the correct values printed? Yes. So this combines everything that we did with respect to when is the state updated. So this is a state variable. Okay. So set count will actually schedule a re-render, but it won't update the count in that same render. So that is why when the console log is right after this one, it doesn't update it. But when it is outside the use effect, every re-render is basically telling it, yes, this is changing, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed. Okay. And that's how we end up with like console proper. We see that the count is updating properly. And yeah, we have like previous intervals cleared. We have ticking timer of 1 second every second. And yeah, that's it. So stale closures. And this is like, I guess at the end of all these sessions, we have come back a full circle. We started with like basic JavaScript. We went to closures, React, and then we ended up with like closures and everything that we have learned so far. Okay, so now comes the time to say goodbye. But before that, to answer this question, any resource to practice these type of interview questions? I haven't found any, to be very frank. Most of these questions are actually a byproduct of the interviews that I have given and the questions that I have been asked. Okay. Whenever I do a React interview, I always get asked about like when does React render, when does React re-render, and I'm given like some snippet of code, and then I have to kind of explain my way through it. That okay, you click on this button, then there will be this re-render because React needs to know that there was a state update, so on and so forth. Okay, so most of these questions come from experience, like the ones that I've experienced. Okay, the questions that I've seen, heard, worked with, and that's how. I guess one of like in today's day and age, okay, and that makes me sound too old, but I'm not. But right now, I guess because of all the coding agents that you have, all the AI tools that you have, I guess if you take this repository, give this repository as an example to I don't know, Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. Okay, I guess Gemini and Copilot would be your best bets, uh, or even Claude or ChatGPT, depending on what you like to use. You can give this repository as an example and say that I want similar questions. Then I think you have a chance to get more such questions, if that makes sense. Okay. Uh, yeah, I guess that's it. I want to like just do one very quick one, which is this same question, but instead of use effect, I want to use a ref. Okay. So I'm going to change this to const render count equals use ref, and const input ref equals use ref of anything, and I'm going to set it to null initially, and then I'm going to say render count dot current plus equals to 1. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this use effect for the time being, and I don't need this one. Just want to show what is a use ref, because I think that is one last thing that you should kind of know. Component rendered, and then we have render count dot current, because this is also one of the popular questions, like what is use ref and what does it do, how does it work. Input type text, and you can pass a ref. I'm going to say it is input ref, and a button. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, focus on input, and I'm going to say on click it needs to it needs to just call the input ref dot current dot focus. Mm, perfect. Mm, okay, I think this should be good. Okay, so sorry, what's happening, and what are we doing? So this is an example of ref. Okay, so a ref allows you to kind of set a reference to some DOM element. So now if I go over and reload this, okay, I click on focus on input. uh, it focuses on the input box 132. I click outside, I focus on input, click outside, focus on input. There is no re-render happening. Okay, and that is the very good thing. So if there is a state variable, because we click on focus on input, okay, that will trigger a re-render. If we had a state variable, we would have ended up triggering a re-render. Okay, but right now, even though I kind of don't make, like, I'm trying to do some things, make some update, make some change, it does not trigger a re-render, and that is like one of the very good things. So you can use a ref to kind of hold a DOM reference, a reference to, like, I don't know, input box in this case, or reference to this item. And that will basically, if that value doesn't change, then it does not cause any re-renders. But that does not mean that you should use ref for everything. Okay, that's also very important, because if you're using ref for everything, you're technically just writing JavaScript once again. So I guess one last thing would be 4a6.tsx. And if I can copy over my 4a4 to 4a6, so our set interval, set timer, and everything that we had to do, I can do count and set count. This is fine. Now I can have a ref called as count ref, which is nothing but a use ref, have a reference to the count variable. Okay. Now inside my use effect, I have const id equals to set interval id and blah blah blah. And I can take a console.log right here and count ref dot current. Okay. So remember the previous problem, and now I'm doing this. And in my set count, I can do this, or I can just do count ref dot current plus one, update every second, return is fine, and this is fine. 4a6, okay. And now if I reload, 0, 1, 2, what mistake did I make? So I have count and set count. I forgot to keep them in sync. Okay, this is the problem. So now I want to ensure that count ref dot current is equal to the count value. Perfect. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm printing it before I update it. So if I do it afterwards, so I update and print it, in that case, both of them will actually kind of ensure to be in sync. What am I missing? No, this is correct. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's, I guess, about it in a way. We have our refs, which you can hold a reference to a value or a variable. And as you can see, this keeps on updating, count doesn't update. And ref is right here. I think I'm missing. Don't think so. I guess that should be it. In console.log, this one here. 2, 3, 4. Okay, perfect. So this works, but also inside here, it should work. I'm missing out on something. I don't know what though. Okay, anyways, we'll figure it out. I know that. Okay, so the idea here is to, instead of having another state, where is it? Yep. Instead of having two state variables, you can hold a reference to some element in a use ref, and then every second there's a tick. You are kind of updating it, setting count. The previous one had the issue of when we did not use previous and we were just updating it. It was a problem. You had to take the previous value, update it. But in case of count ref, we are not doing that. We are just telling that take the count ref and update it to one. We don't have this whole previous ghost and update previous plus one. And dot current, it maintains a reference to something. It kind of keeps a reference to a value, or it tries to keep the state in sync. Okay, that's what I want to say. It tries to keep the state in sync. Not tries to, it will keep the state in sync. So now on every render, count ref dot current is going to update to the count that is being set as part of the set count. The set count will ensure that it triggers an update. It updates the count variable. If count variable changes, then count ref dot current gets the latest count update rather than it's scheduling an update for the next render. It gets it in the same render. Okay. Uh, so functional updates, I would still say like this is actually a better solution than this one. You would use refs when you want to get the latest value, even though you have a stale closure. Okay. So you have stale closure, but you want to get the latest value. Uh, Majorly, you will use this kind of pattern in, uh, let's say, drawing on a canvas or when you want to do charts. So in charts, when you want to, let's say, get the latest data and click on some button which kind of updates the charts, that's when you want to hold a reference to the DOM and update the chart rather than like updating everything around. Okay. I guess that's one of the best ways to understand ref. It actually goes outside of React render cycle. It's like cheating your way uh, in React because React does everything smartly with respect to renders and re-renders. So if you write your code correctly, then you will not be kind of caught in stale closures or anything. But if you have to cheat your way, then comes in ref. Okay, refs allow you to cheat by holding references to DOM elements and stuff. I guess that's it. I am going to end the session. I realize like I'm 5 minutes over my time. Sorry about that. Next up, you'll have like an hour of break, and then you'll learn about today what's happening in Global Hack Week Day 3. Okay, so after this. And finally, before we end the session, I want to request for feedback. So here's the link for feedback. This was session 4. Okay, this was session 4. Provide feedback. Any constructive criticism is always welcome. While you all like quickly do that, let me just do. This was session 4. Refs, and what else did we have? Closure. And that's it. Okay, 8 commits so far. I will have more commits because I do have a few more questions that I want to put. I don't have the time to go through each of them right now, but I can still put them here. May not put it today, but maybe tomorrow or day after. Okay, depends, kind of. Anyways, uh, hope you all had fun. Hope you all learned something new. Hope you all understood whatever you have known about React, seen it in action, understood the React rendering cycle, effects, refs. Did not focus too much on refs, but I guess whatever we saw was worth it. And you are absolutely welcome. Glad you liked it. Do provide feedback. Keep an eye on the repository. I will put on Discord once I've updated it. Uh, in the previous Global Hack Week, I had started adding like JavaScript from ground up. So this also has a lot of JavaScript related foundation, which I updated like last month and then not since then. But it has like foundation types, data structuring, JavaScript coercion, and I had reached around like objects in depth, finished that, and then I wanted to write more about prototypes and classes, but I haven't. So keep an eye on these repositories. I do update them whenever, like on a whim sometimes. Uh, but yeah, they will have like data which You can learn, you use to learn JavaScript, you can use to learn React, you can use to learn JavaScript interview questions, React interview questions, so on and so forth. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone, and I hope to see you in next Global Hack Week. Okay, but for now, enjoy the current one and take a quick break. Come back to join Quinn for today in Global Hack Week Day 3. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.